And Sacramento Kings guard Kevin Huerter will undergo season-ending left shoulder surgery to repair a torn labrum. And Huerter is expected to be fully recovered for the start of the 2024-2025 season. I repeat, Kevin Huerter is out for the rest of the season. He tore his labrum and will be out for the rest of the season. And because of that, Brenden Nunez is joining us, our Sactown Sports Kings insider, to get his reactions from that, your reactions, 916-339-1140. Could this be the last time we see Kevin Huerter in a Kings uniform? Again, Woj bomb, the Kings guard. Kevin Huerter will undergo season-ending left shoulder surgery. He ended up tearing his labrum. And that was told to ESPN that just dropped. Guys, where do we even start?
Yeah, I mean, first off, I guess this is, obviously it is breaking news, but I think we were all kind of moving like we thought this was going to be the case anyway. So in that sense, it is, it's never good to hear somebody's out for the season, but we've at least kind of been preparing for this. It's also great. I mean, obviously Keon Ellis has stepped up majorly with Kevin out, and it's kind of shifted how this team has played here recently. But on the Kevin Huerter front, it is really disappointing. I talked about it, on the post-game live stream after it happened. I just really felt in my heart of hearts that Kevin Huerter was going to have a moment where all of the inconsistency throughout this year, I just felt truly that there was going to be a moment in the playoffs, maybe even on this stretch right here, where Kevin Huerter was going to have that redemption arc. He was going to have his moment where he hits big threes. He maybe stepped up big in a playoff game, maybe even won the Kings a playoff game. It's just really disappointing that it feels like this is about as bad of a season as you could have imagined from Kevin Huerter. And this is really just kind of the cherry on top of what has just been probably his most frustrating year of his career.
I'd say so.
Yeah, I mean, I think that the Kings do have to kind of play differently now. And I think that we've been seeing that they're more of a defensive team, I guess. And that just has to do with the simple Keon Ellis in place of Kevin Huerter. I'm with you, Chris. I thought that Kevin probably would have got rolling at some point. He's a guy that can win you a quarter in a playoff series, and that matters. That's the same way we talk about Sasha being a potential X factor. I feel even better about Kevin having potentially been that. But with Keon in the starting lineup, 5 games now, Kings only give up 106 points, 106.6, but they only score 107.6. So there's been defensive progress, but I think you felt it a little bit offensively as well. Like Kevin moves really well off the ball. He is going to get treated as an elite shooter in the way that Keon is still not right now. I think that Keon is just a straight up good 3-point shooter, but he's not going to get that respect from defenses. And you're seeing teams pack the paint and turn the Kings over because of things like that. So it's definitely a loss. I think that people have been clamoring for Keon to move into that starting spot. I get it. That doesn't mean you don't want Kevin on your bench. Like, this is a big depth loss for the Kings.
I heard you ask Mike Brown actually that the other day. I can't remember if it was at practice or after the game. First off, can you fill the people in on what he said? And then what did you think of how he answered your question?
Yeah, he did end with that isn't the reason we lost the game.
He did say that
against Dallas, of not
Huerter,
having
Trey,
Kevin out
and
there.
Sasha weren't the reasons why we lost.
Yeah, and he just doesn't want to make any excuses. He said the same thing of 5 games in 7 nights, but that primarily the pace is really what he mentioned that Kevin provides. I think they have slowed down a little bit recently. In the open court, Kevin does a great job sprinting to the corners. If you're not the guy with the ball, no matter who you are, unless you're Domas, really, I guess, sprint to the corners. And I think Kevin does a great job of that. And you look in the half court, there's still times where Keon looks a little understandably confused in a rookie way that's very expected and I think reasonable. But Kevin wasn't like that. Kevin was sprinting through his actions. Think of how quick he comes off those dribble handoffs with Sabonis.
Literally sprinting.
Or if somebody's, people would get on Buddy Hield all the time of you're getting guarded this way, you never back cut. Kevin back cut a lot, and he was very good at it. So I think the pace and that spacing is the 2 biggest things that they'll really feel the miss there.
Do you think that it speaks to, again, going deeper than how many points that Kevin was scoring? Because if you do, Keon versus Kevin and the amount of points that Kevin wasn't scoring a lot. And we sat there and said, I mean, if he's not scoring, he's not doing this, he's not doing that. But even for the amount to be lower, I think that speaks to the fact that there is that gravity. And I know a lot of people are probably tired of that term, but there is that gravity that Kevin has that Keon does not have.
Yeah, it's just how it is. And maybe Keon will get to the point where he has that kind of respect. I do think that he's a good shooter, but I don't think we'll get there until after the postseason. I think teams are going to be fine. And we were just talking to him about it at shoot around today. He knows he's the guy that teams are okay with, willing to let him beat them, and how that's been a little bit of an adjustment for him. And that's not going to be the case with Kevin Huerter. Sure, he's below De'Aaron Fox and Domantas Sabonis, but like, you don't just want to let that guy try to beat you necessarily. We've seen what he did in Ben Simmons' last game in Philly, So I think that there definitely is an aspect there of, you just have to change your style a little bit. And the spacing is important, even when shots are not going down. I think it's easy to overlook that last year, a big reason this team made as much growth as it did and being the best offense in the league was because you got De'Aaron Fox and Domantas Sabonis shooters.
Right.
You got him Kevin Huerter. You traded for you signed Malik Monk, traded for Kevin Huerter, and drafted Keegan Murray. And that gave all the spacing those guys would need. And so now you have even more responsibility on these other guys. You can't survive a bad Malik Monk game. He's had really bad three bad games, and you won the first one in Orlando because Keon did well. And you won the one in Philly or against Philly because Davion did well.
I'm looking here, and I know Kevin Huerter is bigger and longer than maybe you would expect that 6'7" frame, but I'm just sitting here trying to figure out, guys, why can't Chris Duarte be some version of Kevin Huerter? He can hit the three ball. He's probably shot the three ball about as well as Kevin Huerter has this season. What is missing in his game that is preventing him from being a version of Kevin Huerter? He plays better defense, I'd say. What is preventing him from providing what we're missing with Kevin Huerter? Is it not knowing the offense as well? What is it?
I'd say Kevin plays within himself better. And that flow of, playing in the 0.5 offense, I guess, is where I would go with this. And that's making decisions in 0.5 seconds. You want to, De'Aaron or Domas or Malik are going to create the advantage, and it's on the other guys to maintain it. And if you just take half a second too long, the advantage can be gone. And I think that Chris can do that a little bit more than Kevin can at times. And the shot's not the same. Kevin is an elite 3-point shooter. Chris has his moments, and I think
he shoots like he's an elite 3-point shooter.
He does, which is part of the conversation, right?
So because he's not. So did Dion Waiters.
There's a handful of these for sure. But I think that those are, I guess, the big differences is there's a consistency. What you're getting every single night when you put Kevin Huerter out there on both ends, to be honest. And I think, Chris, there's still more variance.
By the way, real quick, if you're just tuning in now, breaking news, Kevin Huerter is out for the season to repair a torn labrum. He will have surgery, sources tell Woj, a Woj bomb here on a Friday before the Kings' biggest regular season game of the season. Go ahead, Chris.
Yeah, I just wanted to get your thoughts, Brenden, on, I think the one thing that we don't really talk about enough with Kevin Huerter, especially come playoff time, it was a bigger talking point then. And you just mentioned the Ben Simmons game, game 7, Kevin Huerter, which is what we were all excited for when Kevin got here. One thing Kevin Huerter brings that you cannot replace with anybody is playoff experience. And this team does not have a wealth of it. It really was Kevin Huerter, who had been to the conference finals with Atlanta. You had HB, who young in his career reached the finals with Golden State. Now you have JaVale, who doesn't really get minutes. But in terms of guys who have played real minutes, that's another guy who's now not playing for you that had, at least, if this team is going to make the second round, which, at this point looks a little far-fetched, but Kevin was going to be a guy that you could lean on and say, come playoff time, this is a guy who's been here, done that. This shouldn't be a lot to him. And now you walk in and you have Keon Ellis, a guy who is, I don't even know if he's started 15 games in his career, and you're about to throw him out to go start the most important games of this run so far.
Yeah, I think Kevin did have some inconsistencies throughout his postseason, but there's that big series that he had against Philly for sure. Yeah. And he's been there. Like you said, there's value in that because there's very few guys on this team. And I guess the other one I would point to is Mike Brown, obviously.
Right. Yeah,
I guess he's a big aspect, but it's different when it comes from the guys on the floor, right? Mike talks about that all the time. I think the big way that you feel it is the fact that it's Keon specifically replacing it, like you said. This is a guy that if we came into the year and we were saying that Keon Ellis is about to start in the postseason,
and there's not really another option either.
Nobody would feel good about that. Yeah. Like this is a guy that was on a 2-way at the beginning of the year, and everybody's like, oh, why wasn't he getting minutes? Why wasn't he getting minutes? This was there the whole time because there still are inconsistencies. There's those moments. Seen it
here recently.
There's the looking back against Jalen Brunson. Kyrie did okay against him. I think he held his own against Kyrie, but Kyrie got him a little bit. Like I said, you see these typical acceptable, understandable rookie mistakes. those are a lot harder to live with in the postseason.
Exactly.
And so, if that Jalen Brunson moves happens in Eastern Conference team, say that happens at the end of a playoff game.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And that's just
nightmare.
something you cannot do in the NBA. You can't turn and take your head off the ball. You got to trust the guys behind you are going to be talking.
Right.
And that just speaks to the swing and misses from this offseason with I know I mentioned Duarte because that's the guy. We were clamoring for Duarte and trying to get him in a situation where maybe he could start or be one of the starters, and that didn't turn out. Now, not that we don't want to see him, but a lot of the times you're just hoping that he does something positive on the floor. And maybe he turns things around. He's going to have opportunity. Yeah. You got Keon Ellis. And look, we've also seen that Mike Brown will tell you straight up. He's told us about Keon and his growth. You're going to see Davion Mitchell. This isn't just going to be the Keon show. So Davion, hot game a couple games ago. This is going to be by committee. And it is just so interesting how even though Kevin Huerter wasn't really scoring the basketball, you do see the difference, and you do see how teams are defending, even if it's Luka being able to chill just a little bit more because, hey, if Keon Ellis beats us tonight, Keon put up 10, right? He put up 10, and the Kings lost by 36. Yeah. So there's a problem there, and there's going to be more pressure on Malik Monk. We will continue breaking all this down. Sorry, you'll have to wait till next time for the pump-up speech as we continue to break down the breaking news of Kevin Huerter being out for the rest of the season. And we ask the tough question, is this the last time we will see Kevin Huerter in a Kings uniform? Styles and Watkins, Sactown Sports.